Okay, all right. Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom. We are live. Um, we today will be looking at Numbers, chapter 35. Um, we, as always, will be looking at, of course, the what the scriptures meant for the people at the time. The commandments were given to Israel at a specific time in a specific place, and they had specific significances. But we want to also be able to look um, beneath the surface and deal with you know how we can relate the Torah to Messiah, how we're able to see Messiah in these Torah commands. So I want to start off by let's see, we'll read it in parts and deal with the. Let's see, we'll read first. I want to look at. Let's read just down to. Let's see here. Oh wait, I'm at the wrong thing here. Hold on a second. 35 1 we'll read down to, let's see, just the first let's just read the first five, just the first four verses. Here, hold on, let me pull this up, and we'll just read and talk about them, and then read a little more and then talk about those ones. Let's see here. Verse 35. Yeah, just the first five verses here we'll talk about here first. Okay?
Read it. Yeah. And Yahweh spoke to Moshe in the desert plains of Moab by the Jordan of Europe, saying, Command the children of Israel that they shall give the Levites cities to dwell in from the inheritance of their possession. Also give the Levites open land around the cities, and they shall have the cities to dwell in, and their open land for their cattle, and for their herds, and for all their livestock. And the open land of the cities which you give the Levites are from the wall of the city outward 1,000 cubits all around. Shall I continue? Oh. And you shall measure outside the city on the east side 2,000 cubits, and on the south side 2,000 cubits, and on the west side 2,000 cubits, and on the north side 2,000 cubits. And the city is in the middle. This is to them the open land for the cities.
Okay, very good. So it's interesting when we look at the when we talk about the Levitical cities, um, because when we think about and we just in the last portion it dealt with the divvying up of the land to Israel, and if all of the tribes, they all got their particular lands in Israel, but there was no mention of Levi, no mention of the Levites. They didn't have lands that was allotted to them. Um, but then when we get over to here and we learn about the Levitical cities, we see that they're now from the lands that was given to the uh, different tribes from those lands, there was a little, there were parts of each of the tribes places that was given to the Levites. If we look here, let me put it back up here. It says the commandment is says command the children of Israel that they shall give the Levites cities to dwell in. So of the land that was given to Israel in terms of the 12 tribes, of those lands there were places within those uh, the divisions that was given to the Levites for them to live and for their animals um, to pasture lands. Um, so when you think about these Levitical cities, the Levites were different from the rest of the tribes, as to where the rest of the tribes in their lands, they would, they would farm and they would till the land and so on and so forth. The Levites, because they didn't have a land that was called their own necessarily, they basically were were allotted a place to live and a place for their cattle to roam and to feed, but they didn't really farm because they didn't really have to, because they farmed based on the things that was given over to the Levites. So they didn't. So besides the fact that they didn't get land, it wasn't as if they were they still were taken care of, but they didn't have, they couldn't farm because they had their Levitical responsibilities was the thing that they had to be responsible for. But they still needed to have a place to, they had to live. So they had to dwell somewhere. And they did have livestock and cattle and herds. But again, they didn't farm these Levitical cities. They just kind of, they dwelled there. There's a, okay, so if we go down, so we see here, let me just see. I'm gonna pull this up and see if I can hold on one second. I think I'll be able to put this on the screen, this map that I have here. See if I can get it. Let's see here. Oh yeah, here it is. Oh wait. Okay, there it is. Okay, so let me pull this map up. See what this kind of looks like. Oh, here it is. All right. Okay. Oh, wait, you can't see that. So we have here. Oh, hold on one second. Let me just put this. That's some difficulties here. That's what I'm trying to do. Let me do it. Oh wait. All right, I'm not able to stick it over there for some reason.
Where's that?
It's right there.
You can't go there.
I can't stick it over there. All right. So I'm not able to navigate this properly. But if we think about the land,
If you make that smaller.
oh, maybe yeah. Maybe it's taking up all the space over there. Oh yeah, there we go. Okay, now we talking about something. Okay, so hold on a sec. Here we go. That's how big it is. All right, it's always something. Oh, there we go. Okay, so looking at the land here, see we have how the land is divided. We have how the land is divided. We can see all the tribes. I don't know why that keeps getting in the way there. And these all of these little green dots are the Levitical cities within the tribes, the tribal uh, places. So you have Benjamin and Judah, Simeon, Reuben, Gad, all of the divisions, and then you have all of these. I don't know why keeps showing up here. But the point is that within the other all of the tribes' dwellings were places that were set up for the Levites within them. So it was scattered without. It was scattered all through the land of places where the Levites dwelled at all the time. So it wasn't like, wherever the tabernacle or the temple was is just only where the Levites were just only there. They were, they were all over the place, right? So you was never far from a Levitical city, no matter where you were. So if we continue on, let me get rid of this. Wait a second. I'm having some technical difficulties here. I don't know why this got magnified like this. Oh, there we go. Okay, so if we continue on, wait a second. Down through 6 down through Let's see where it starts talking about this here. 15. We're going to read 6 through 15.
And the cities which you give to the Levites are the 6 cities of refuge, which you give to the manslayer to flee to. And to these you add 42 cities. All the cities which you give to the Levites are 48, these with their open land. And the cities which you give are from the possessions of the children of Israel. For the larger tribe you give many, from the smaller you give few. Each one gives some of its cities to the Levites in proportion to the inheritance that each inherits. And Yahweh spoke to Moshe, saying, Speak to the children of Israel and say to them, when you pass over Jordan into the land of Canaan, then you shall choose cities to be cities of refuge for you, that the manslayer who struck someone mistakenly shall flee them. And they shall be cities of refuge for you from the revenge, and the manslayer is not to die until he stands before the congregation for right ruling. And of the cities which you give, 6 are to be cities of refuge. Give 3 cities beyond the Jordan, and give 3 cities in the land of Canaan as cities of refuge. These 6 cities are for a refuge for the children of Israel, and for the sojourner, and for the settler in the mass, for anyone who mistakenly strikes someone to flee there.
Okay, good. Okay, so these Levitical cities, among the Levitical cities, there were 6 cities of refuge. Oh, wait, you guys gotta mute yourselves. Okay, so it says, verse 12, and they shall be cities of refuge for you from the revenger, and the manslayer is not to die until he stands before the congregation of the right ruling. So they came up with these places where if someone was to kill somebody mistakenly, if you were to mistakenly kill someone, you could go and be safe in these Levitical cities. So let me just pull this up one more time just so you can see. Here. Because it makes it easier to think about whenever you can actually see what this looks like. Even though it's small, the land is kind of split up down these waters here, right? The Jordan is like in between here. And so there's 3 on one side, there's 3 on one side, and there's 3 Levitical cities on the other side. So they're kind of centralized. They're kind of centralized throughout the land, where in the event that you had to flee to one of these cities, you should be able to make it to one of the 6 places. When it says 3 on one side, 3 on the other, the division is basically this water that goes in between. There's 3 over here. a 3 on this side. Okay. All right. Okay, so I want to look at some of these things here when we think about the idea of refuge, right? These places were called the cities of refuge. So let's look at this. Verse 6 here, refuge. This word refuge means referring to a refuge, a place of refuge. It is used to point out a city to which a person is guilty of manslaughter could flee for protection. That don't really give you a clear understanding of what the word means, though. So let's look at this. Hold on. Let me make this here. Taking in refuge. I think we need to look at this, the root of miklot. Miklot is really telling you refuge. But this word here, to maim or lacking in its parts. If somebody's maimed, that's like have missing limbs or something, right? Lacking in parts. That's interesting. To be stunted, to be deformed. It refers to an animal that is deformed or injured member, not fully or properly developed. When you think of, if you have a deformed animal, that deformed animal is not necessarily able to properly defend itself, right? If it's deformed, if it has like a little baby arm or something, right? It's not able to fend for itself if its growth has been stunted. We think about the refugee, well, the city of refuge. It's a place that's provided for someone that needs protection, right? It's a place that's provided for someone who needs protected. It's a place that's provided for people who are not able to protect or fend for themselves. In this case, when we think about what's going on with this place, in verse 6, when it's talking about these cities of refuge, it says, which you shall appoint for the manslayer, that he may flee, a place where he may flee. Right? So they're calling this person a manslayer, right? Well, it's translated, let's see what the King James. Oh yeah, it's literally saying manslayer. This word here is what? Ratsach, which could be murder. Right? The word manslayer we're only saying manslayer because of the context. When we think about murder, we think about the intention that goes along with murder. But this word, ratsak, let me just pull this word up. Ratsak. It means to murder. It means to slay, or it means to kill. This same word, ratsak, can mean to take a human life, which is the primary concept behind the word. It's used to indicate premeditated murder. It's used to indicate an accidental murder. The ultimate act of revenge and death by means of an animal attack. Basically, this is kind of an all-encompassing word that's used, kind of like how we use kill. Somebody could kill somebody, and it could be an accident or it could be on purpose. But we're still saying just this one word, kill, as if there's I guess the only differentiation that's made is, the context. So when we see this word here, manslayer, we think about manslayer. If we think about it kind of in our kind of cultural context, if somebody is convicted of manslaughter, it's kind of a lesser thing than like first degree murder, right? So, but it's really just different degrees of this one word, ratsak. Ratsak. So but again, it's here in the context of verse 6 is dealing with someone is doing an accidental killing, right? This is an accident. A person who kills somebody by mistake can flee to the cities of refuge. If we go down, where'd you read it? 15? If we go down, oh yeah, it says it in verse 15. These 6 cities shall be a refuge, a place of protection for both the children of Israel and for the stranger and for the sojourner among them, that everyone that kills any person unawares may flee thither. Right? So if you killed somebody by mistake. So it goes on to say what can be classified as a mistake and what isn't.
That's exactly what I was about to ask.
Yeah, it's about to tell you right now. So if you go down to 16, read 16. Just start reading that 16 there.
And if he smite him with an instrument of iron so that he die, he is a murderer. Okay, hold up. See that real quick.
Okay, it's the same word. Okay, go ahead.
The murderer shall surely be put to death.
Mm-hmm.
And if he smite him with throwing a stone, wherewith he may die, and he die, he is a murderer. The murderer shall surely be put to death.
Okay.
Or if he smite him with a hand, weapon of wood, wherewith he may die, and he die, is a murderer. The murderer shall be put to death. The revenger of blood himself shall slay the murderer. When he meeteth him, he shall slay him.
Okay, so if the person kills somebody with a weapon, if you kill somebody with a instrument of iron, if you throw a stone, or if you have some weapon of wood and you hit that person and you kill them, you're a murderer and you'll be put to death. Right? And again, this word is still the same word. It's really just based on the context, whether it's a murder or like a manslaughter, like how we think about it.
Moses hit the guy. Stone.
Yeah.
Did he die?
Yeah, so he killed somebody, right? And he died. So he, according to this, would have fit into the category of a murderer and should have been put to death. Um, and the one that was going to do it, we saw is who is what was that verse? 19, the Revenger. The Revenger. Let's look at that. Gaal is the redeemer or act as a kinsman redeemer. The word means to act as a redeemer or a deceased for a deceased kinsman. To redeem or buy back from bondage. To redeem or buy back as kinsman's possessions. In Leviticus, it talks about people having their land taken because of debt or so on and so forth. The kinsman redeemer can go and he can buy that land back so that the land doesn't go, outside of their inheritance and so on and so forth. And here, what we're talking about here, if somebody kills your brother, if somebody kills your brother, then you are the revenger of your brother. So when that person is found to be a murderer, you are the one who goes and takes care of it. Just like when you see all those old kung fu movies and somebody killed their teacher or their brother or something, and then he goes out to go and gets the revenge. It's kind of like an ancient concept that that people been doing for a long time. When you think about I saw this one thing where it was like in some Middle Eastern country, they found there was a guy who raped a lady, and so he was found guilty, and the people who was this guy's he died by firing squad, right? And the people who were in the firing squad were like the male people from the family of the girl who was assaulted. But the concept of being the revenger, being the kinsman redeemer, is like a thing that has been around for a long time in many different civilizations. I was thinking about the reverse of that now when you see how like when you see what happens with these police officers where they'll go and they'll just go and take somebody's life, and there's nothing that you could do about it. Like, we live in this land that has these laws that they're really unjust, as to where if we lived according to Torah, we see that there there are things that are in place that allow people to uh, revenge, right? It says in verse 19, says in verse 19 there, for the revenger of blood himself shall slay the murderer when wait, that's not the one I was looking for. It's all the way down at the bottom, but I want to bring it up. Let's see here. Um, oh, 33. So you shall not pollute the land wherein you are, for blood it defiles the land, and the land cannot be cleansed, and the blood that is shed therein, but by the blood of him that shed it. Defile not therefore the land which you shall inhabit, wherein I dwell. For I Yahweh dwell among the children of Israel. So when we talk about this idea of people killing people and nothing being done about this blood that's being shed, it defiles the land. Well, we can't really think about this land as being a land that needs to be cleansed, but I'm saying conceptually, we see that. What was you gonna say?
I was just saying that.
Just say it loud.
I was just saying that cleansing. It's interesting how blood can cleanse. That's my phone. That was my fault. But it's just interesting how blood can cleanse the land. To me, we talk about
blood.
It
defiles and it cleanses.
Well, yeah, it defiles. Blood both defiles and cleanses at the same time, because the life is in the blood. But just thinking about how the blood is shed and there's no revenge or whatever, how it can actually defile. Yeah. And then if you kill the person that killed the other person, then that somehow rights the wrong and it cleanses. Right.
So it's the same thing going on. Somebody's dying.
Yeah.
But in one case, it's something that's bringing defilement and disorder and dysfunction to the situation, where on another hand, the same exact thing is going on in terms of somebody dying and blood being shed, but it's cleansing the situation. But then here we have this situation where if blood happens to be shed, there's a place where the people who did the blood shedding can go, and it lends a temporary right to the wrong that was done. If somebody accidentally kills somebody, if somebody accidentally killed my brother, I don't really want to hear about, well, it was an accident. He didn't mean to do it. Like, you know what I mean? It's not, I don't know. That's not really going to satisfy my, anything inside of me, right? Just to say, well, I didn't mean to do it. But what we see here is this place that was created for the protection of this accidental manslayer, where he's able to go and receive protection. And again, we think about the city of refuge, that word refuge coming from the word that causes us to think about somebody or something that's not able to protect its own self, right? This deformed thing or animal, or this thing that wasn't fully developed, again, cause you to think about something that is not able to protect itself, right? So again, when you think about the cities of refuge, this person is fleeing from what is owed to him, right? Death is owed to him because of the blood that was shed, by mistake. And so from kind of like a legal perspective, the person is unable to stop what basically must happen to him, right? death must happen to him. There's nothing that he's able to do in order to alleviate the consequences that are upon him, unless, of course, he makes it to the city of refuge, right, where he's able to um, receive protection. So again, we looked at where what can be classified as this unintentional murder, right? Verse 16 says again, if they had an instrument of iron, that's not an accident, right? If you had this big piece of iron, that wasn't an accidental thing, right? If you was throwing a stone, right, that they might die, right, that wasn't an accident, right? If you had this wooden weapon, right, that wasn't an accident. So we were able to see 3 examples there of what wouldn't be in the classification of this accidental murder. But it says in verse 20, if he thrust him with hatred, or hurl at him by lying in wait that he die, or in enmity smite him with his hand that he die, he's a murderer. So we're adding more to the list of, those that aren't able to. So if you say that if there's hatred involved, if you thrust, that's probably like a push. Let's see if that's push. Drive out, shove away. So if you push somebody with hatred, or hurl at him by lying in wait and he dies. If I'm mad or hatred, well, wait a second. Hating, hatred, strong feeling of hatred. Or enmity, hostility, animosity, ill will. Okay, so basically, if I'm in a fight and I had animosity and ill will towards a person, and hold on now, smite him with my hand, and he dies, he that smote him shall surely be put to death, for he's a murderer. The revenger of the blood shall slay the murderer when he meets him. That sounds like an accident, but I guess you have to enter in the idea of enmity, right? So there's hatred involved. So there's hatred, there's ill will involved, laying in wait. If I'm hiding out waiting for somebody to come, and then I smite them and they die, right? I'm a murderer.
How can you kill someone How can you kill someone on accident?
Well, I knew of somebody who was like in just a regular fight. And when the person fell to the ground, they hit their head on something and died. So, you can be fighting somebody and then something happened where they just, they accidentally die. If you fighting on concrete or by rocks and somebody falls and hit their head off or something, if you knock somebody out and they fall and hit their head, like when you're knocked out, you lose all control of your everything. So if you get knocked out and you fall and hit your head off or something, you know, you can accidentally die. And so that's what it's talking about here. But if you like hiding out, if you hiding out waiting for, like, I know this person will come around the corner, and when he come around it, I'm gonna get him. But you not planning on killing him, but you end up killing him. But you was lying in wait. According to this definition here, it's calling you a murder. But it says in verse 22, if he thrusts, or that's the push, or to shove him suddenly without enmity, or have cast upon him anything without lying in wait. So this is just kind of a chance. You came across somebody, and maybe they bumped into you or something. And you're like, hold on, man, you just bumped into me, like. But when you do that, you push them down and they fell, and they right, without lying in wait. So a thrust, if you thrust him suddenly without, there's not enmity involved. It's kind of like, I don't know, shocker or whatever. Like, hold up, like, without laying in wait, or with any stone wherewith a man may die, seeing him not, and cast it upon him that he die. So this is the accidental. You didn't mean to do anything. It just kind of, that's what happened. Then the congregation shall judge between the slayer and the revenger of blood according to these judgments, and the congregation shall deliver the slayer out of the hand of the revenger of blood, and the congregation shall restore him to the city of his refuge, whither he has fled, and he shall abide in it unto the death of the high priest. So there's always, when there were disputes in Israel, there was always this, we had the officers and the judges and the courts. So if you was in the city of refuge, you was free from the revenger of blood. So when they get to the ruling that it really was an accident, there was no malice involved, you went ahead and went back to the city of refuge and stayed there, and you were safe in the city of refuge as long as you stayed in it. But verse 26, but if the slayer shall at any time come without the border of the city of his refuge, whither he was fled, and the revenger of blood find him without the borders of the city of his refuge, the revenger of blood and the revenger of blood killed the slayer, he's not guilty, because he should have remained in the city of his refuge. Right? So we see they went through the courts. They went through the court system and found that the blood was shed by mistake. But there's still like this, blood guilt that exists. So even though the courts decided that it was a mistake, and he wasn't, the slayer didn't have to be immediately killed for doing the killing, he had to go and stay in the city of refuge if he wanted to remain alive, because he was still, according, the blood still needed to be redeemed. Right? There was still a price, so to speak, on the head of the individual outside of the cities of refuge. So that blood still needed to be revenged. it was fine as long as he stays inside of the cities of refuge. But once he comes out, he's no longer under the protection. As long as he's in the borders, as long as he stays in the borders of the city, he's safe, right? The boundaries, the territories, the barriers, the thing that makes the distinction between the outside and the inside. As long as he stays inside of the borders of the city of refuge, whichever one he made it to, he's safe. But if he does not remain in the borders, if he does not remain inside of that city, and he comes across the blood, the kinsman redeemer, that kinsman redeemer can go ahead and get his revenge. Until it seems as if, verse 28, because he should have remained in the city of his refuge until the death of the high priest, but after the death of the high priest, the slayer shall return into the land of his possession. So it seems as if he must do that. He must do that time in the city of refuge. However long the high priest that's in office is alive, he must stay there. But it seems as if once the high priest dies, he's able to go back to wherever he came from. And then it don't say that, but it seems as if he's able to go back to the land of his possession, he's able to go back freely and not have to worry about being killed by the kinsman redeemer. So again, when we look at this, we see the whole idea of this place where which was made available. There was 6 of these places scattered throughout the land, where whether you're a homeborn or a stranger, if you had this accidental accidental murder on your hands, where you're able to flee to and seek asylum and safety, right? This place where you were able to go, and it allowed you to be free from what was owed to you, which death was owed to you, right? For being death was owed to you because of the fact that you actually killed somebody, right? And it was classified as murder in terms of being fitting into that category of murder. You hit them with something, you had a weapon, you laid in wait, there was malice involved, there was intention involved, right? But when we remove the intention, when we remove the laying in wait, when we make it purely an accident and a mistake, we see that there is a place that's made available that is profitable for the manslayer. So when we think about this idea of the city of refuge and what it is that it provides, right? This place where somebody who does this thing this irreversible thing, is able to go and receive refuge. This place that's provided for someone who is in a position where they're not able to provide for or protect their own self. Um, when we think about this, how can we see Messiah? How can we see Messiah in this idea of the cities of refuge? If we can even see Messiah at all. When we look at the city of refuge and we see what it does, we see what it makes available for those that flee to it. How are we able to see Messiah in the cities of refuge? This place of escape from those things which are against you. What do you think about that, Uday?
Yeah.
Can you see? Can you see how that can picture what we see in Messiah, the city of refuge?
City of refuge. Definitely.
One thing that I was thinking about was let's see what verse that is. Let's see. 26. But if the slayer shall at any time come without the border of the city of his refuge, whither he has fled, the borders of the city provide safety for the slayer. Right? The borders of the city provide safety for the slayer. When we think about when we think about when we think about Torah, right? When we think about the instructions of the Almighty, when we think about how they relate to us, the Torah, the instructions of the Almighty. We think about what the new covenant is. We think about the law in our hearts, right? When we form our relationship with Messiah, when he becomes our Savior, when he becomes our Redeemer. When the new covenant becomes realized in our lives, when we have the spiritual heart transplant, right? When the Almighty puts the laws in our hearts, right? Then now we become we come inside of Yahweh's character, right? We come inside of the character of the Almighty, which is Torah, right? When we allow the Ruach to come inside of us and transform us from the inside out, it causes us to walk in righteousness, right? It causes there to be a distinction between righteousness and unrighteousness. It causes there to be a distinction between light, and darkness. If we look at let me see what this is in First John here. Let's see where that is. Okay, so let me just pull this up over here. Let's see here. This. First John, that is chapter 2. Seven. Okay, that says chapter 2, verse 7. Brethren, I write no new commandment unto you, but an old commandment which you had from the beginning. The old commandment is the word which you have heard from the beginning. Again, a new command I write unto you, which thing is true in him and in you, because the darkness is past, and the true light now shines. He that saith he is in the light and hates his brother is in the darkness even until now. But he that loves his brother abides in the light, and there is none occasion of stumbling in him. But he that hates his brother is in darkness and walks in darkness and knows not whither he goes, because that darkness has blinded his eyes. So when we think about what's being said here, there is a distinction that's made between those that are in Messiah and those that are not, right? Those that are in Messiah, there is a certain way about them, right? The writer here is describing that as light. And those things that are contrary to the character of Yahweh, the writer here is describing those things as being in darkness. That person who is in darkness, he is saying, is not walking according to the character of Yeshua. So when we think about this idea of the cities of refuge as being this place that affords those that are in it protection, you can only have the protection of the city of refuge while you're in the city, right? You can only be safe from that which is trying to kill you when you're in the city, when you're within its bounds. When you're on the outside, there's nothing that can stop the blood avenger from getting you, right? So there's safety found inside of the borders. Now, when we think about our relationship with Messiah, our relationship with Yeshua, proof that we have light in us is that we're actually walking in light, right? Proof that we have light in us is that we're actually walking in light. When we think about this idea of salvation, right? Of safety, of having this safety from these things that are against us, that we're not able to save ourselves from. It's all in our safety is only found inside of the borders of the character of Messiah. We can't say that we are one with Messiah and be outside of the character of Messiah, right? We can't rely on the blessings and the things that the Most High has for us and be on the outside, right? We think about the blessings and the cursings of Israel, right? The thing that causes Israel to receive curses is what? Is not walking in the character of the Almighty. So there's all kinds of safety and blessings and things attached to being inside of the borders of Yahweh's character. But when we're on the outside of the borders of his character, then now we have all these things that are against us. Right? So when we think about this from a spiritual perspective, when we think about the fact that because of sin, right? Because of sin, we are owed, there's death that's owed to us, right? We have a debt of death that's owed to us because of sin, right? Because of the fact that we have transgressed against the Almighty, right? So there is a blood avenger, right? That is rightfully able to kill us, right? And there's nothing that's able to protect us from this debt that we owe, lest we come under the protection of Messiah, right? Which is a place of refuge, right, for us, right? The whole idea of refuge, again, we think about what that word means. It's being in a position where you're not even physically able to provide protection for your own self, right? Which is a perfect representation of Messiah. When we think about the seas of refuge, right? When we think about Messiah, when we think about what he does for us, he puts us in a position that we cannot get to outside of Messiah, right? There's no thing that you are able to do outside of Messiah that's able to put you in a place of protection from the thing that's owed to you, which is death, right? Death is owed to you. And there's no right thing that you're able to do in your own strength that's going to get you to the place of safety, but getting to that place that's going to provide that protection for you. You know, when you think about the idea of people who they begin to do righteous things, right? They just begin to start doing things. They begin to start keeping the Shabbat. They begin eating clean, right? They begin doing all of these things that they think that Yahweh wants for them to do. But we could think about that kind of in connection with the cities of refuge, where on outside of the city of refuge, it doesn't matter what the slayer did on the outside. Death is still waiting for him, lest he gets inside of the city of refuge. Right? And then, like, say for instance, even if the Redeemer comes to kill the slayer, and maybe the slayer even is like victorious over the blood avenger. Now he didn't do nothing but really make it worse, right? Because there's still going to be someone that's coming for. He doesn't solve the problem by physically overcoming the person who's coming against him, because according to the Torah, there's still that blood debt, that blood guilt that's on him still, right? So thinking about it like that, there's nothing that he's able to do to relieve that thing that's against him. And likewise, when we think about us, there's nothing that we're able to do to be able to gain right standing with Messiah. There's nothing that we are able to physically do to be able to gain that right standing with Messiah. We have to be able to make it to the place that will be that protection for us, right? Because we really are like that slayer who needs to go to that place of refuge, because again, we think about the definition of that word, it is about that one who's unable to defend himself, right? It's the same situation we're in, as where we're unable to right the wrong that we have done, right? We're unable to do it, right? We're unable to fix the thing that we have done on our own, right? We're unable to do it, right? So we see that picture painted for us when we look at this whole thing with the cities of refuge, where it is this place that allows those that have that need protection, where they're able to go. Well, we see that when we think about this, the whole relationship between the Redeemer and the Slayer. As the Slayer, there is someone who has a right to kill you. There is someone who has rights against you, right? And there's nothing that you can do about those rights that the person has against you, but to come into the protection of the cities of refuge. When we think about the dichotomy of the spirit and the flesh, um, as a carnal being, as a physical human being, right? You have uh, these forces that have rights against you, right? And those forces that have rights against you is your carnality. That is your flesh. Your flesh has rights against you, just like that. The blood avenger has rights against you. And once you step outside of the safety of the Ruach, once you step outside the safety of the spirit of Messiah, the rights of the flesh, they have every right to overtake you and do with you what they will. Just like, what we see with the cities of refuge. Inside of the cities of refuge, that manslayer is safe. You find safety inside of that place. In that place, by the way, which is there is an overabundance of rightness, right? Because that's where the Levites are, right? What did they have to fill their hearts and minds with? They have, what they did inside of the cities of refuge was deal with righteousness. They didn't have to worry about tilling the ground. They didn't have to worry about all of these things that were connected with their carnal desires and needs, because those things were met for them by the people, right? So with these cities of refuge, you probably had this place that was kind of like a righteous, he's got that stuff all over his hands. A righteous utopia, right? This place that's just full of righteousness. Now, again, when you think about this idea of accidentally killing someone, even though now let's think about this. Even though the idea of accidental murder, even though you're putting it in the category of being an accident, in order to get you to that place, you're still participating in an action that is not necessarily the best thing that could have been done, right? Where you get in a situation, where your response to the situation is like physical aggression, right? Your response to a particular situation, not malice filled, but still physical aggression. But then that physical aggression then caused death, right? Where if you were functioning in a way that was a higher way, if you're functioning in a higher way, right, you wouldn't even got to that place of the accidental murder, right? So So when you think about what potentially could have went on in these cities of refuge, I think about them as being like a place where people were kind of consumed or entrenched in righteousness, right? When a certain way, um, became, the way. And we talk about the certain way, that would have been things that belong and can be associated with the character of the Almighty, right? These people, even though, again, even though you're inside of the city of refuge, you think about this now, even though you're inside of the city of refuge, on the outside, you're still kind of guilty, right? You're still kind of guilty because the blood avenger has every right to kill you, right? There's still something that's owed to you on the outside, and he has every right to deal with you in that way on the outside. And again, so there must be a level of for lack of a better word, a level of wrongness associated with your action that needs to be rectified. So and again, think about the time that needed to go on. Like it's just like some unspecified time of you being in the city of refuge until the priest dies. The high priest dies. The high priest that goes in, that's the high priest that is the high priest when you go in, he has to actually die. He don't even have to be functioning as the high priest. It don't say when his time is up. It says when he dies, right? So, really that's some unspecified time. You guys could be like the same age, like, and live, until you're like however long you live. But think about the sentence, if you will, that's going on. You're being almost forever connected to those that exemplify the standard of righteousness, right? The place that you have been uh, uh, confined to, the place that you have been confined to, puts you in close proximity with those that are to exemplify righteousness as a lifestyle, right? This is what you find in the cities of refuge. Being in connection with and or close proximity to those that function as the example of righteousness. And inside of that, there's safety. But outside of it, you get whatever is due you, right? So again, when we think about this in terms of Messiah, to me, it just seems to just be a direct parallel. Yeshua for us is the city of refuge, right? Being in Yeshua, being Messiah, gives us safety, right? Here, let me pull this up. Let me pull this up here. Let me pull this verse up here. Let me pull this verse up. This verse, reminds me of the cities of refuge. Let's see if we go over to Bach. 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 Okay, it says, "For I am persuaded that neither death, nor life, nor messengers, nor principalities, nor powers, neither the present nor future, nor height nor depth, nor any other creature shall be able to separate us from the love of Elohim, which is in Messiah Yeshua, our Master." Right? When you think about the idea of safety in Messiah, we see that concept illustrated for us here. When we have all of these things that are against us, and outside of Messiah, these things have rights over us. Right? These things that are mentioned here in this verse have rights over us and can literally kill us outside of Messiah. But inside of Messiah, these things have no power over us. Right? And these things are not able to cause there to be separation between us and Messiah. Okay. So, let me stop this here. Okay, so why does he get that all over his hands? Okay, so again, cities of refuge, right? They give us this picture of Messiah. They give us this picture of who we are in Messiah. We think about what Messiah does for us. So we think about the cities of refuge, and we think about Messiah. We think about blending these two concepts together, right? In Messiah, we should be walking in righteousness, right? Because we're inside of the borders of that which makes a distinction between light and darkness, right? Righteousness and unrighteousness, right? City of refuge, safety, outside of the city of refuge, outside of its borders and outside of its protection, right? When we think about people who say that they are followers of Messiah, we think about those that say that they are adherents to the doctrines and the teachings of Messiah, that has to look a certain way, right? It looks like something, right? It causes us to do things that look a certain way, right? And again, looking at the parallel, somebody who dwelled with the priests, right? Someone who dwelled with the Levites, their life, I'm sure, their life mirrored that of the Levites, right? Just by pure proximity. He did the things that the Levite did, right? That one that dwelled and lived in there with the Levites, right? As aware, potentially that could have caused kind of a internal kind of a reformation to happen, which, by the way, probably was necessary in the first place, right? Because there was something that could have been done to prevent this thing from happening, from the very beginning, that caused this whole thing from the beginning. Um, okay, so the Caesar Refuge, they're a picture of Messiah, a picture of our relationship with Messiah, but a picture of what Messiah does for us in terms of bringing us to a place of safety, a picture of taking us away from those things which rightfully can be against us, and removing those things from our situation. Okay, so are there any thoughts or questions or comments about Caesar Refuge and how they relate to Messiah? Okay, so if not, then time is it? I guess we'll go ahead and be done for now. Then, if that's the case. All right. So until next time, I don't know why you decided to get over there. Until next time, shalom.
Shalom. Shabbat shalom.